Alrighty friends, I just finished tiling an entire shower using Musselbound tile adhesive mat. So in this video we're going to talk about the pros and cons of this product. I'm Melissa Woods from Welcome to the Woods. If you're not already, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I talk about all things home DIY and I do some really amazing projects I'm sure you'll love to see. First off, a tile adhesive mat. What is this? It is basically an extremely strong double-sided sticker you put on your drywall or backer board or whatever you're tiling onto, and then you peel off the liner and the tile sticks to this. Musselbound is one of the most popular brands of this, but there are other off-brands. This is seam tape. It is required to put between the rolls of mat on your wall to get a continuous waterproofing membrane. It's required for showers, it's recommended for backsplashes, any place you're tiling that's going to get wet. We're going to start with the pros, why someone would use this over traditional mortar thin set products like that, where you apply it on the wall, you use a notched trowel, to create ridges, and then you sink your tile into that. Musselbound, its selling point is that you can set your tile and grout the same day. That's because it doesn't require any setup time the way thin set would. The main reason I chose this is because I was doing my bathroom in an order where most of the finishes were going to be done before I tiled the shower. This is just because of like a back order on my window for the shower area, etc. So I wanted something way less messy, and that is probably, in my opinion, the biggest pro of Musselbound is that it's not messy. I didn't create any dust in my room. I didn't create any slop. It was like so straightforward to put up, and it didn't wreck any of the other things I had finished, like my wall treatment and the flooring. Once the tile mat is on the wall, it is easy to use. So it's easy to like set your tile onto it. Getting the tile mat up was another story, but I'll get into that later. I would say that it also was nice where I could work a little at a time. I'm juggling 4 children and my business, and I just often only have increments of 2 to 4 hours where I can come work. Well, you can't tile a whole shower in 2 to 4 hours, so I could come every day, peel off some of the liner, work on some of the tile, and then leave. That was really nice, versus if I had a bucket of thin set mixed up, obviously I'd have to waste whatever I didn't use that day, and there was no waste using the Musselbound. I mentioned this when I was describing what Musselbound is. Not only does it help you set your tile, but it doubles as a waterproofing membrane. So that's also another big bonus, because if you're not applying a different waterproofing membrane to your walls or wherever you're tiling, this is a continuous waterproof membrane with the seam tape. That maybe saves you a step. It also reduces the likelihood of damage to the walls behind your tile job. The last big pro I would say about using Musselbound is that you can place tiles upside down, like in a recessed niche, or in my case, tiling up to the window ledge. I had tiles I was putting on, the bottom side, and they didn't fall down, obviously, they just stuck. I didn't need to support them or tape them into place while the thin set cured. And you can also place tiles without spacer support, because once they're placed, they're permanently attached. And you don't need spacers to hold them into place and prevent them from sliding down or shifting. All right, let's get into the problems, because this product is not the miracle answer to people who don't like the mess of tiling. The first problem comes with the walls underneath. So if your walls are not completely flat, this product is gonna be rough. It telegraphs that, obviously. And if you're using thin set, the thickness of the thin set can kind of even out some of those wall discrepancies. Musselbound is just going to make it so that your tiles won't stick all the way if you have actual depth discrepancies in the wall below. Now, because I was hanging up all new drywall in my situation, it really wasn't that big of a problem. You can't shift the depth your tiles are laid at, right? So if there's any wall discrepancy, it will show in your tile job. You can't use self-leveling spacers or anything like that like you can with thin set. You cannot use Musselbound on floors, and you can't use it with bigger tiles. The max tile size is 12 inches by 12 inches. That worked for my job, but if you were trying to do large format tiles, that wouldn't work for you. Now, I mentioned that it was easy to apply once the Musselbound was on the wall, but putting the Musselbound on the wall was really hard, actually. It was finicky. and nearly impossible for me to roll down straight without creases to get it exactly lined up where I want it to be, and then the next one next to that with, you know, without the seams overlapping but just a tiny gap between. It was really hard. Have you ever installed peel and stick wallpaper? It's just like that. It's exactly like that. But peel and stick wallpaper I could pull off a bit and readjust, and the Musselbound, no. As soon as you stick it, it is permanent. And if you try and pull it off, it starts to pull apart your whatever wall you have behind it. It is that strong of an adhesive. Thankfully, the areas that I did have creasing, it wasn't that big of a problem to push the tiles against and get them flush. I just like used my weighted roller and I pressed with the liner on the Musselbound, of course. I pressed across the crease as hard as I could. That intense stickiness is on both sides of this tile mat, so as you can imagine, there is no repositioning tiles once you place them. The spacer is everything. If you don't have your tile pressed up against the spacer and you push against that tile into the mat, you can't remove it. I tried everything to reposition one. I laid slightly crooked, and then I just decided I had to be less of a perfectionist and deal with it because there was no going back. Versus thin set's so much more forgiving, right? You can shift it slightly after you place it, and then your spacers hold it where it needs to be. One annoying thing about it was like, so I'm working in small increments, 3-ish hours, right? Then anything that I took the liner off and didn't get to that day, I had to replace the liner because you can't leave the adhesive tile mat uncovered. The adhesive will dry out a little bit, and then you also risk like getting dust on the mat, and then that affects how the tiles stick to it. So that was a little bit of a nuisance, that your liner had to be replaced, or like that anywhere that the mat was exposed had to be covered if you weren't immediately laying tile. And obviously Musselbound is more expensive than thin set, right? So you're buying these mats, they cover 15 square feet, and then you also have to buy the seam tape. It really adds up, and it's not the cheaper route. So you have to know that like this method is going to be easier in your situation in order to maybe make up for that added expense. Okay, now for the absolute biggest bummer about using Musselbound tile mat. And this is not something I foresaw when I decided to use it for this shower project. When you're installing the tile, they have to be extremely dry. Like not mostly dry or dry to the touch, like out of the box dry. So I used a wet tile saw 50 to 60 times on this shower install, and all of those tiles had to dry overnight before I could install them. I tried everything. I tried a hair blow dryer to dry the back of the ceramic tile. I laid them out in the hot sun on a 90-degree day. No matter what, they weren't fully dry enough to really contact with that adhesive mat and stick the way they're supposed to for like at least 6-ish hours after I cut them. And this extended my tile project by at least a day, because I would have to do all of my cutting one day and then the next day come install them. And after you cut them, you have to wipe them down like with a dry cloth and make sure that all the dust from cutting is off, because that dust will also interfere with the adhesion. You can totally tell too when you place a tile on the adhesive tile mat on the Musselbound, you can tell if it's like really fused and sticking. You won't be able to pull it off at all. So I thought that was the biggest problem with this method, is like how you couldn't cut with a wet tile saw and then install it right away the way you could with thin set. And it did prevent me, I feel like, from moving as quickly as I maybe otherwise would have. Alright you guys, that's all I have for you in this video. I hope you learned about Musselbound adhesive tile mat, and that answered any questions you have about using this product. And let me know in the comments below, did I convince you it's worth it? Did I convince you it's not worth it? What do you think? There are some links in the description I would love for you to check out. I know that some of you are so generous as to support me on Patreon, and I'm gonna list your names right here in this video. You guys are so amazing. Supporting me financially allows me to do a lot better work and publish more often on Welcome to the Woods. I also want to invite you to follow me on Instagram or TikTok. My other channels are fun and I produce totally fresh original content on there. Thank you for watching Welcome to the Woods. We'll see you again next time.